Charles from GMAT Ninja Tutoring here. Welcome to the mother-in-law of all data insights question types. Today, we're going to talk about multi-source reasoning. This is episode number 4 in our 5 or 6 video series. We'll see how much you guys want to do. 5 question types on data insights. This is the one that's kind of the funky outlier, a little bit awkward in some ways. So it feels a little bit like reading comprehension. If you're not familiar, here's what you're going to see. You're going to see 2 or 3 tabs on your screen. Every set of those tabs, I'll talk about tab sets during this video, is going to come with 3 questions on your actual exam. So here's how much you're going to see. Typically, so what GMAT has been telling us is 10 to 20% of data insights is going to be these multi-source reasoning questions. In practice, what we're seeing on the practice tests is either 1 or 2 sets. So you're either going to get 1 tab set with 3 questions or 2 sets of tabs for a grand total of 6 questions. It seems to be bouncing around a little bit. Some people see 3, some see 6. And here's the thing. This is going to feel very, very different than the other questions on data insights where it's 1 at a time. It's kind of like eating an elephant. They're going to overwhelm you with too much information. The question is, are you being wise in how you process that information, how you organize yourself? So how to eat an elephant? My friends tell me, really, there's no good way to eat an elephant because they taste terrible. That's another story. Always, 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 I want you to read first. We're going to model that a little bit today. I'm going to give you the passages, the tabs by themselves, before we even look at the questions. Don't get into the habit of lunging at the questions. You're going to start misreading. You're not going to take the time to process the big picture, much like reading comprehension. If you've watched any of our reading comprehension videos, the thing you'll hear me say over and over and over again is read first, make sure you're processing, making connections between paragraphs. Same sort of idea here, except that the information is going to be different. It's not just passages. Sometimes it is just passages. Other times there's going to be a few different graphs to process. Get your head around, what is this information telling me? How do these tabs relate to each other? It's going to make your life so much easier down the road. Now, that said, don't obsess over every little detail as you're reading through the passages or digesting those graphs, because sometimes TMI, they're going to give you too much information. That's kind of the point of data insights. Can you process information as it often comes at you in the real world? Too much of it, can you get to the stuff that's really important? So we're going to focus on that today. Can't emphasize this enough. Organize your information as soon as it gets hairy. This first question or this first set of questions we're going to go through really gets after that today. And be flexible. Plot your path forward before you start doing stuff. Really, really easy on data insights. We could say similar things on quant, but I think it's a really strong feature of data insights. If you start lunging at questions, doing the first thing that comes to mind every single time, you're going to get yourself into trouble. I want you to think first, what's my plan here, especially on the mathier questions? Again, data insights, a little bit of math, a little bit of verbal, a little bit of other stuff, plenty of logic. So make sure that you're taking a moment to go, is this my best bet? And again, some of the questions I've chosen for today really force you into that flexibility. If you just kind of start doing stuff without thinking about how productive those things are going to be first, you're going to get yourself into trouble, spend a really long time on questions. Another really important thing on these multi-source reasoning questions, they intimidate people from what we've seen in the early returns on GMAT Focus. Breathe, guys. You've got some time here. Remember, 3 questions per set. On the whole for data insights, 45 minutes for 20 questions, an average of 2 minutes and 15 seconds per question. So you multiply that by 3. You've got 6 minutes and 45 seconds for the set as a whole. Now, I'm not saying slow down. I'm not saying get lazy about it. I'm just saying, hey, you've got a little bit of leeway. If it takes you a minute or 2 to digest what those 3 tabs are telling you, no worries at all. It's much like reading comp. Investing in the passage sometimes pays off, often pays off, usually pays off. So make sure you're doing that. All right. If you're watching this, please, please, please watch it on desktop. These multi-source reasoning questions, when you see them on the actual exam, 2 tabs or 3 tabs, depending on the question, and you click through the tabs. I don't really have the luxury of doing that when we're doing this in video format. So I've chosen questions that I can cram onto the screen. It's not the prettiest thing ever. I've chosen carefully so that these slides, these questions aren't going to look too horrible, but you're definitely going to want to be on desktop, not a tablet, not more mobile, unless you have a huge phone or a huge tablet. It's going to be really hard to read. So please, please hop over to a computer as you watch this. And again, we're going to go through 2 sets of tabs today, 3 questions each. So this is equivalent to the maximum you're going to see on an actual data insights section on GMAT Focus. Pretty hard ones. We see a lot of people struggle on all 6 of these questions. So you're going to find some of them easy, some of them harder, depends on your taste. Key is be flexible, be organized, be careful, digest a little bit first. One last thing, if you're enjoying these videos, please hit that like button. Please, please, please subscribe. That's how we know that you're enjoying these. We'll keep producing more of them as long as you're liking them and subscribing them and leaving us comments and telling us what you think. All right, with that, I'm just going to give you the tabs themselves, just the information. I want you to take a minute or 2 to digest. I'm not going to leave it on the screen for too long, and then I'll add the question in after a minute or two. All right. Go ahead and take we'll give you about we'll say a minute and a half, 2 minutes here. And I just want you to get in the habit, digest your information. Don't grip too hard. Think about what kinds of things is this telling me before you launch into the question. All right, just adding the question in now. If you need more time to digest, that's totally fine. We'll give you about a minute, minute and a half more here. Live audience, as always, please, please, please let me know how you're doing. You have an answer, please pop into the chat. If you're lost, please pop it in the chat as well. All right, if you're not watching this live and you need a little more time, hit the pause button. For everybody else, okay. Pretty interesting live group. Thank you so much for all the feedback. Seeing some interesting answers coming out of you guys. Really appreciate that. Keep them coming. Please be honest. Helps me understand kind of where people are struggling. Makes it better for people watching not live as well. Okay. So believe it or not, this might actually be one of the more straightforward ones, and I'm seeing a lot of struggles with the live group. So what do we know from the passage? Again, as always, take some time to digest. There's always going to, not always, almost always going to be extra information you don't need. get your head around it. Don't grip it too hard. We've kind of got this business of how much the daycare makes off of everybody. We've got these minimum ratios mandated by the regulations. So different age of kid is going to determine different minimum ratios of staff to kids. So in that one's classroom, we know that the minimum ratio, we need at least one staff member for every one kid. This is the kind of thing where if you kind of read that and go, wait, what does that mean? Take a moment and just go, well, yeah, if there's 2 kids, we still need one staff member. If there's 4, we need one staff member. But as soon as we get to a 5th kid, now we need a 2nd staff member, right? Because that means if we only have one staff member for 5 kids, that means that the ratio is too low. Okay, once you have your head around that, I keep saying, and this is going to be, I'm going to beat this dead horse over and over today. Poor horse. Want you to organize your information very, very carefully. In this case, we're interested in the day of the week in that week 2 chart where the ratio of staff to children is the lowest. Okay, so I'm just going to take the 5 days of the week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. How many kids do we have each day? We've got 13 on Monday. We got 13 again on Tuesday. We got 11 Wednesday. We got 12 Thursday. We got 10 Friday. So how much staff do we have on each day? And by the way, there is a faster way to do this that I'll show you in a second that's more intuitive. Again, very typical GMAT, especially data insights, certainly quant as well. Often there's 3 ways, 6 ways to do something. They're going to reward you for finding the faster ways. So here's the number of kids in that 1-year-old classroom each day of the week. How many staff do we have? Well, 3's, if the ratio has to be at least 1 to 4, 3's not going to cut it here. We need 4 staff members if there's 13 kids. Same thing here, because we need that ratio staff to kids to be greater than 1/4. Okay, once there's 12, 3 staff members will do the trick. Same thing with 12. And here again, 3 staff members. This is all going to keep that ratio just above 1 to 4. Okay, now that's not the question. The question is, on which of these 5 days is the ratio of staff to children the least? So we have 4 to 13, 3 to 11, 3 to 12, 3 to 10. Which of these is going to give you the smallest number? You know, if you want to go crunch some fractions, knock yourselves out, you can do that. You could also be intuitive about it and say, well, wait a minute, this is going to have a bigger denominator than either of these guys. So this has to be the smallest of the 3. That's a quarter. This is going to be more than a quarter. So this is our winner. And the answer is Thursday. That's answer choice D. And again, thank you, live group. I think we saw maybe 20% of you get this one right. Okay. So door number 1, method number 1 on this question. And again, a lot of what I'm saying here could apply to a quant question as well in the GMAT, very much their style. Going to give you questions where there's multiple ways to solve it, rewarding you for being flexible and thinking, what's my best way to do it? This is a fairly slow way. If you're going to do it, be systematic. It doesn't take me that long to write all this out. It doesn't take me that long to write this out. It's not so bad. If you're going to do it, commit to it, do it systematically. Just be aware that you're picking a slow way, but it's also not terrible. But organize your information carefully. Make sure you're double checking stuff. You want to make sure, again, adaptive test. I know all of you heard me say this a million times. Adaptive test. They're going to punish you for missing the easy ones, whatever's easy for you. Don't beat yourself. Let the test beat you. So if you're going to do it this way, do it carefully, do it systematically. Now, quick shortcut here. And if you don't follow this, no worries at all. But when you think about what they're saying, the quick way here is to say, well, wait a minute. When is that ratio, or when is the ratio in the actual classroom going to be at its minimum? Well, it's going to be when it just barely hits the regulated amount. So the ratio has to be 1 to 4 or greater than 1 to 4. Can't be any lower than 1 to 4, right? Because that's what's regulated. That's tab 2. So if I can find one of these where it's 1 to 4, it's got to be the answer. And there you go. That's Thursday. It's 1 to 4. It can't possibly be less than that. So in theory, you could just eyeball that chart in tab 3 and go, wait a minute. This is going to give me a ratio 1 to 4. The best I can do. That's the least we're ever going to get here. And that would be your answer. So nice little shortcut. Okay. Let's give you question number 2. Go ahead and give you a minute or 2 on this guy. Now, here's the thing. I think I threatened this earlier. Going to be hard to fit stuff on the screen. This question is going to be a little bit beefier. It turns out we don't even need tab 1. So I'm going to do you a favor and take it off the screen for you, rearrange a little bit. So you've got tab 2 on the left, tab 3 at the top. Tab 1 has been removed to make it all fit in the slide and make it readable. And there's question 2. Go ahead and take a couple minutes. All right. If you're watching this not live, hit the pause button if you need it. Live group, keep keep your answers coming in because they're actually super, super helpful. And actually, I'll give you a quick minute before we jump in here. And again, another question that's it's the art of organization with a ton of information, and picking your battles really, really carefully can be a really tedious question. But if you're a little enterprising about it, it's not so bad. A couple general questions I want to address here real quick. First, Potter, thank you for this, actually. Do we have more sessions on the newish type of data sufficiency questions? Yeah, the next one, episode number 5 in this series, the new data sufficiency questions. If you've already done a bunch of data sufficiency from the old GMAT, fantastic. Some of what I'm going to say will not be new to you, but I'm going to have 2 goals in that session. It's going to be live this coming Friday. So one is to make sure that you have a really good systematic process for all data sufficiency questions, just to make sure you don't miss the ones that are easy for you. Don't beat yourself, let the GMAT beat you. And we're also going to talk about the changes. So there are some changes to data sufficiency questions. They're not huge. You're not going to do anything radically different stylistically, but good to kind of get you up to speed to the kind of thinking that might feel a little bit different. I think it certainly feels different on some of the questions than it did before. So we'll go through that. We'll spend a nice 45 minutes or an hour session on just data sufficiency this coming Friday. All right. Great. Seeing tons of disagreement in the live group. Awesome. Love it. Okay. So this is another potential fire hose if you're not careful. My board is very, very ugly. Apologies for that. So kind of my first instinct here, and probably the same for many of you, is to say, well, okay, let me sort of, we know these original ratios, that the staff ratios, the ratios of staff to kids. We can punch that in here. We can get the number of kids from week 2. That's easy enough to do. Calculate the number of staff, also very easy to do. And then we sort of figure out what were the changes to the number of kids in each classroom. And then we can get the number of staff. Okay, it's a bunch of little steps, but none of them are that big of a deal. If you're going to do it this way, and you kind of have to, do it in a really organized way. Now, that said, if I look at this and go, yeah, the way I happen to lay this out, I've got 7 columns, I've got 5 rows. That's a lot. I'm punching in 35 numbers. Okay, this is where I'm going to say, do I really have to do all of this? And I go, well, wait a minute. 2s, 3s, and 4, 5s are the only ones we care about. Those are the only ones that issue in the question. They don't ask us about the infants or the ones. So that's gone. That's gone. Don't care. And now all I have to do is focus on these 3. This is awesome. I just cut my work down by 40%. These are the kinds of opportunities you want to look for. We can say the same thing on quant, but data insights, I think they really hammer away at that. That is a lot of what they're trying to test you on. Is can you take a mountain of information and cut to what's important, what you really need to deal with? And then from there, just be careful and systematic about it. That's it. All right, I'm going to start punching on these ratios. This is straight from the chart. So 2's minimum ratio of staff to kids is 1 to 6, 1 to 10 for the 3s, and 1 to 13 for the 4, 5s. We already know the number of kids in each classroom in week 2 in that first week that's in the chart. And then we can calculate the number of staff from here. So we've got 2 staff members in week 2 with 9 kids in the 2 classroom, 2 here, and just 1 here, 12 kids. Ratios 1 to 13, 1 staff member can handle them. Good luck to that one person with 12, 4, and 5-year-olds all by themselves. Source, my kid is 5, and my other one is 3. Anyway, okay, now we just have to work through this stuff. Well, 2 kids turned 1. I don't care. I only care about the 2-year-old classroom, the 3-year-old, and the 4 or 5 classroom. Doesn't matter. So one of them turned 2, so we're going to add 1 kid to that 2-year-old classroom, and that's it for that one. 1 kid turned 3, so that means that 1 kid left the 2-year-old classroom and joined the 3-year-old classroom. Awesome. And 4 of them turned 4, which means 4 kids left the 3s and joined the 4 5s, and that's it. That's all our information. So again, feels like we might have 35 little buckets in here to deal with, but once we get in there, it's actually not that much to do. Very typical of data insights. It's like, oh, how am I going to eat that elephant? And then it's like, oh, it's just a miniature elephant. And it tastes pretty good with fava beans and a nice Chianti. All right, week 3 kids for the 2-year-old classroom, unchanged. It's the same as it was before, which means your staff, unchanged. Here, we got some more action. We lost 3 kids net, went from 15, add 1 kid, subtract 3 kids. We got 12 kids. How many staff members do we need? Same as we did before, ratio 1 to 10. So 1 staff member can handle 10 kids. We got more than 10 kids. We need 2 staff members. And what about the 4 5s? Just again, nobody left that classroom. So 12 plus 4, that gives us 16 kids. So ratio of 1 to 13, one staff member can't handle 16 kids. We need 2 of them. So obviously here, same for the 2s, same for the 3s, but we had an increase for the 4 5s. And that is our answer. Same for 2 and 3, increase for 4 5s. All right, everybody having fun? One last question on this set, give you a couple minutes on it. And then we'll switch over to something that I think for most people is tougher. So we're just warming up still. Good luck to you. This is delightful. Live group, thank you so much. Getting tons of disagreement here now, which is exactly what we hope for. It means we hit a hard question here. Okay. So questions asking us, hey, if we start combining classrooms on Friday, what happens? Can we decrease the number of staff, save some money without violating the regulations? Wouldn't that be nice? All right. So very similar in terms of what you're trying to do organization-wise to the last question. I'm just going to make sure I'm being super careful about laying everything out. Not super hard here. We're just calculating ratios, adding up classrooms. There's a different ratio now. Okay, great. Just being really careful and systematic, but there's a lot of moving parts, and that's how they get you, which, by the way, is sometimes what dealing with real world data feels like. To GMAT's credit here, sometimes this is what probably some of your jobs feel like in moments. Now, notice, for what it's worth, they're not out to get you. They're not out to trick you. That is not the style. They're trying to test you on your data skills as best they can. How do you do it processing information, making inferences from it? But they've done all kinds of funky things here with the information to make it really easy to trip over your own feet. So when they talk about the regulations, less than 2, well, that's the same regulation ratio of 1 to 4. 1s, 2s, 3s, 4, 5s are in the same classroom. It's really easy for the voice inside your head just to get you into a silly error and try to separate out the 4s and 5s or whatever. All kinds of silly things you can do here. Again, very much by design. They're not out to trick you, trap you, anything like that. It's just, yeah, this is sometimes what data looks like, and it can be annoying. Be careful. Watch your back. Don't make a silly error. All right. I've written in the ratios already that are the regulations. Here's the number of kids that are in the classroom on Friday. How much staff do we have? We've seen all this before. Going to have 3 staff members, 2 staff members for 9 kids. Not enough. 2 staff members can handle 8 kids. We got a 9th kid. We need 3. Same deal here. We're going to need 3 if we have 10 kids in that 1-year-old classroom. 2-year-olds, different ratio. 1 staff member does it. 12 kids, 1 teacher. No. 1 teacher can handle 10. Need 2 staff members there. 8 kids, no problem with 1 staff member. Not that I envy that staff member. Okay. Now what we're going to do is start combining classrooms and see what we get. So what do we have? First is infants and 1s. If we combine that, we get 19 kids. So at a ratio of 1 to 4, that means we need 5 staff members. And that's going to be a decrease. We had 6 before total. We combined the 2 classrooms. Now we need 5. So that's a decrease. All right. What about the 1s and the 2s? If we combine those 2, what happens? So we get 16 kids. Now, fine print of one of those tabs, you got to go with a lower ratio. So that regulation is based on the youngest kid in the room. We're going to have 1-year-olds in that combined 1 to 2-year-old classroom. So that means we're going to need 4 staff members. And that means that there's no change because we had 4 before. And what's our last one? We got the 3s and the 4 5s. So now we got 20 kids. And again, we're going to go off the ratio. It's a higher ratio of staff members to kids, fewer kids per staff member. So we're going to go off of that. We need 2 staff members. And that, once again, is a decrease. And that's it. So we have decrease, no change, and decrease. I had some language highlighted in there, but the minimum ratio is determined by the youngest kid in the classroom. And there we have it. All right. Hope you enjoyed that one. That one's mathy. Next one's going to be really wordy. So same thing as before. I want you to get in the habit of digesting the information first. So I'm going to pop up 2 more tabs on the board, all crammed in. If you're having fun, please hit that like button. If you're not having fun, please also hit that like button. Please subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you like about the videos, what you don't. If you want more videos, we will keep producing them depending on what you guys are into. So here comes one more passage. It's just going to be 2 reading comp passages, but don't worry. Some math is somehow mysteriously coming from it. One of those lovely things Data Insights does to you. Just when you think you know where they're taking you, they're going to give you a question that's a curveball. All right. I'm going to shut my mouth. Go ahead and take a minute or 2 reading these, and then we'll toss the question on the screen. Spot on, Potter. Give me another 30 seconds with this and we'll add in the question. All right, adding in the question. Gonna have to cram some of the text in a little bit. And we'll give you a minute or two. As always, live group. Let us know how you're doing. All right. If you're not watching this live, hit the pause button. Again, as always, live group. Thank you so much for punching in your answers here. I know it can feel a little vulnerable to punch something in, not knowing the answer, and feel silly if it's wrong, but it helps. It helps us enormously. People watching not live, hey, you owe the live group a bunch. So if you see them on the street, buy them ice cream or something. All right. So what I want you to do here in general, again, these multi-source reasoning sets are going to be all over the freaking map. Some of them are going to have a graph in one tab, a table in another, and just language in a third. Sometimes it's going to be 2 tabs with just language. Sometimes it's 3 tabs with just language. Sometimes it's charts all over the place. You have no idea. I'd love to sit here and say every single time I want you to look for the same thing. So for example, reading comprehension, if you've watched any of our videos on that, you'll hear us kind of say the same sorts of things all the time. There's flexibility within how you process that information, but we'll always say, hey, I want you to stop at the end of every paragraph and think about the author's purpose. I can't say stuff like that here because there's so much variety in these passages. It's really, yes, I want you to digest, read a little bit first, make sure you have a sense of just how large and how smelly this elephant is, how smart the elephant is. Elephants are amazing, by the way. They're really, really smart creatures. Anyway, take a moment, digest, see what you got here. But there's nothing I can really say where it's like, take notes exactly like this every time on MSR. That doesn't make any sense. So here, you just want to make sure you have your head around generally what's going on. Can you spot some issues? If you see a conclusion of some sort from one of these people, the prospect or the environmental scientist, run with it. A lot of the time you won't get that. Here, I would argue that what you want after you read this is just a general sense of, okay, what's a load deposit? What's a placer deposit? Okay, that's going to be enough that you're going to know where to look as you get into some of these questions. And remember, you can only see the first question. Every set has 3 questions on your test. So it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to say, oh, let me read the question first and then see what I need to do with the passage, because you have no idea what's coming down the pike on those other 2 questions. And they can be really creative about how that question might pop up later in surprising ways. All right, this first one, each lode deposit is located on a river upstream from a placer deposit. Here's the relevant chunk of the passage that placer deposits come from pre-existing lode deposits. Basically, there's a lode deposit that's pre-existing, and the placer deposit is downstream from it. It's where that lode came up to the surface and then kind of got released down a river, essentially. So it is true that placer deposits are downstream from a lode deposit, but does that mean that every lode deposit is upstream from a placer deposit? Not at all. We know that placer deposits come from lode deposits, but there's nothing here that tells. So it's very, very possible, and I think frequently the case, lode deposits that have not eroded in this way and come downstream, there's no reason why there has to be a placer deposit there. Placer deposits will always come from a lode deposit. Lode deposits can exist without the placer deposit. So this one is not justified. Pretty subtle there. If we flip the language around, this would be justified. But in this case, nope, every lode deposit does not necessarily need a placer deposit upstream from it. Second one, some lode deposits were created by placer deposits building up in a location over time. That's exactly the opposite. So lode deposits located where they're originally deposited by the mineral-bearing solutions that carried the gold up from the Earth's interior. So not getting deposited from placer deposits, are coming straight up from the Earth. So not justified. Third one, placer deposits are likely to be located within the paths of present or former rivers. Absolutely. Exactly what they're saying here is that generally they get transported by rivers in the form of dust or flakes and then get deposited. So generally speaking, and again, notice the language there, likely to be located, maybe there's exceptions, but likely to be located within the paths of present or former rivers. Very much justified here. All right, that's your warm up. Go ahead and take another one. We'll give you another minute or two. Two more questions. Last one will be fun. And again, if you're enjoying yourself, please hit that like button. If you're not enjoying yourself, maybe hit it anyway, please. All right, if you're struggling here, hit that pause button as always. Everybody else, let's keep this moving a little bit. Okay, so notice question 1, question 2, both of these. If you've really taken that time to digest the passage, especially the prospector's bit, and you understand the big picture. Here's what a lode deposit is. It's these huge deposits of gold that come up from the Earth's interior. Placer deposits are when that comes up to the surface, erodes downstream. Don't have a lot in these placer deposits. They're dwindling. because yeah, it's just the bits and pieces that come downstream. Once those get exhausted, they're easier to mine. They're easier to take advantage of because it's closer to the surface. But those are getting exhausted, at least in the US context. If you've kind of got your head around that in general, this first one on question number 2 should be pretty easy. Same with question number 1. Some of that's pretty easy as long as you're keeping really straight which one's load, which one's placer. Those aren't so bad. I'm seeing lots of right answers, lots of wrong answers out of the live group. So again, as always, guys, thank you so much for participating. Helps me a ton. Okay, placer deposits are on average larger than load deposits. That is exactly the opposite. Look at, what is that, the second sentence there. Load deposits are what prospectors dream of finding, large deposits of nearly pure gold. And then it goes on to describe how load deposits work, how placer deposits work. But yeah, load ones are the big ones, the mother lode. That's where that term comes from. So yeah, this is definitely not true. Placer deposits are smaller in general. What about the second one? Mining placer deposits sometimes has environmental impacts beyond habitat destruction and sediment release. So environmental scientists talk specifically about habitat destruction and sediment release as it relates to placer deposits. Okay, very cool. So yes, those are the primary impacts of placer deposit mining. But check out the language here. This is where it feels just like critical reasoning. If you've watched our critical reasoning videos, you'll hear us say over and over and over again, watch those modifiers. So if we have a conclusion to a passage, for example, that says X is a solution to our problem, X is the primary solution to our problem, X is the only solution. I changed that one word, completely changed what it means to strengthen or weaken that passage. Same deal here. Primary impacts. The environmental scientist is suggesting here that, yeah, hey, there might be other impacts here. These are the primary ones, but there might be others. So statement 2 here, mining placer deposits sometimes has impacts beyond this. Yeah, you bet. Sometimes. Sure it does. If these are the primary impacts, that suggests there's others. So sometimes there are others. Answer to this one is yes. Nikhil, thank you so much for this. This is amazing. And for those of you that have watched, for example, the Ukraine Marathon back in the day, we love this. And we keep donating to charities whenever you contribute during these videos. So thank you so much for that. I'm glad this is helping you. Third statement, gold production from placer deposits makes up only a few % of total production, primarily due to increased quantities of gold being produced from load deposits. All right, well, here's the relevant chunk. However, in recent years, the quantity of gold mined has decreased as the readily accessible deposits, placer deposits, have been exhausted. So what the passage is focusing on here is, yep, those placer deposits in the US have been exhausted. Now, a lot of you might have picked yes. I'm seeing this from the live group, seeing some yeses on number 3. Why might that be? Look at that last sentence, because it kind of suggests that, yeah, load deposit mining has gone up, right? So despite an increase in net gold mined, okay, well, if placer deposit mining has gone down, load must have gone up. So you can kind of trick yourself into thinking, well, hey, maybe the load deposits are a big deal here. 2 things. Number 1, statement 3, primarily due to increased quantities of gold being produced from load deposits. It's not suggesting that's a primary cause. The language here actually isn't saying that the increased production from load deposits is the primary cause at all of this idea that placer deposits are only a few %. The focus here is on the quantity of gold mined from placer deposits has decreased. The deposits are exhausted. Therefore, now placer deposit mining accounts for only a few %. So it's really pinning that causality primarily to the exhaustion of the placer deposits, not to the increased quantities from the load deposits. So we can say no here. Subtle, very subtle. Welcome to that critical reasoning sort of feel. Yeah, great question, Supersonic Foxbat. And by the way, huge appreciation for all the comments, participation, all over the place. Our channel, this channel, really appreciate you. Yeah, this is a fantastic question. I mean, this is the ultimate question for verbal, right? So how do you watch out for modifiers? It's one of those habits of mind. And one of the things we'll talk about in a future video is we kind of do a big picture video at some point here on Data Insights. Right now, as things stand, we don't have a ton of official questions available for Data Insights. There's a fair number. But one of the things that we have our private tutoring students do right now is we want you to focus on verbal first, critical reasoning, reading comp, focus on your fundamental quant skills. All of those are going to bleed over. All those things you do in critical reasoning are going to help you here on things like this for Data Insights. So critical reasoning in particular, I think, is that distillation of, hey, you better watch those modifiers. So if you've seen our critical reasoning videos, we'll say over and over and over, hey, read that passage, find the heart of the passage. And we might say something like, okay, hey, Find the heart of the passage. Let's say there's a conclusion in that critical reasoning passage. Their words are mine. Their words are mine. Their words are mine. You don't want to paraphrase on critical reasoning because, again, you drop that modifier, you get into trouble. The idea here is that over time, if you're really focused on doing critical reasoning the right way, you're going to get better at picking up on those modifiers. You're not going to paraphrase into oblivion. It's a skill and a habit you can develop over time. So if you develop that really, really well in critical reasoning, maybe to a lesser extent on quant and reading comprehension, and then come back over and apply it to data insights, you probably won't have that problem anywhere near as often. So this is where there's going to be a pretty strong correlation between that type of thing that you see in statement 2 and your skills on critical reasoning, because it really is, hey, you drop that little modifier, the primary or the sometimes, you're going to get hit pretty badly on critical reasoning. At times, you're going to miss some easy questions. If you get that habit out of you on critical reasoning, come back over here, you'll do well. All right. With that, one last question on here. Reading comp, blah, 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 long passages, 2 passages. Okay, how annoying. Same passages. Guess what, guys? We're going to do some math. Good luck to you. I told you there was going to be curveballs. Welcome to MSR. All right. If you're watching this not live, you need a little more time, hit that pause button. What I'm seeing out of live group is absolute paralysis. Got a couple of you trickling in now, but this is a tough one. Starting to see stuff coming in now. So I personally, I think this one's pretty darn tough. So if you struggle on this, no shame in it whatsoever. For the record, these 6 questions we chose here, according to GMAT, the difficulty levels are all medium and hard. I think 4 of these have been hard, 2 medium, or 3 and 3. So I'm challenging a little bit here. And again, part of what makes these hard sometimes is you can just hang yourself forever and get really, really stuck when you're actually taking the test. Don't let yourself get stuck. If you don't see a good path forward, walk away. And this is a pretty classic case of it, because you can drive yourself absolutely batty with all sorts of crazy stuff here. If you've done conversions, like the kind of thing you might do in a chemistry or physics class, there's ways to do this question that are totally kooky and convoluted, or maybe you're doing nothing systematic at all and you're just kind of dividing stuff and multiplying stuff and adding stuff and you're playing with units, and you can really get hung up. So think first, plan first, always super, super important. Quant and data insights, especially these get mathy. And again, this kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere because we're doing reading. We're doing reading. Hey, wait a minute. Now we got to calculate some stuff. All right. Welcome to Data Insights. Okay. So take a moment in the beginning, plot your path forward. Think about what you're going to do. Think about what they're really asking you here. Okay. They give us a piece of information. Now, suppose that we have a lode deposit and we can produce 20 times the average ratio of gold to ore. And we want to know the number of days it's going to take to produce 100 metric tons of pure gold if we have a mine that's producing at the fastest daily rate of 180,000 tons of ore. So notice here, I see a lot of people on this question kind of getting themselves all hung up. They sort of get nuts because it's like, ooh, we got all these different units. We got grams, we got kilograms, we've got tons. There's all sorts of things going on. And it's like, yeah, but check this out. This is in metric tons. This is in metric tons. I don't actually really need to do a whole lot of unit conversion here. If you step back and go, what do I really need? All I really need to know is what percent of this ore is going to be gold. That's it. What percent, what proportion, what fraction, however you want to think about it, it's all the same idea. Now, that's basically given to us in the question that on average, 1 gram of gold is going to be extracted from every 130 kilograms of ore. Well, here we're 20 times that. So 20 grams per 130 kilograms. And this is where a lot of people freak out. They sort of drop the strategicness and just kind of go, okay, I got to convert all this to tons. No, you don't. I just need the proportion here. So as long as I can get these into the same units, I've got the proportion. I multiply it times 180,000. And now I've got the pure gold per day. That's all I need. And I'm really, really close. 1,000 grams in a kilogram. So this is 20 grams over 130,000 grams. Now, I could simplify that. Turns out I really don't need to here because this is my proportion. This is it. This is what I wanted. Out of every 130,000 grams, tons, kilograms, doesn't matter. 20 parts per 130,000 are going to be pure gold. So this is my ratio of gold to ore. Great. All we need to do is apply it to this. We're in business. 180,000, that's your maximum daily output of ore. I'm going to multiply that times this proportion. And now one of the reasons I didn't do anything to this up here, I mean, I could have simplified that to whatever it would have come out to, 6,500 or something like that. And by the way, you do have a calculator on Data Insights. It is very easy to forget that because you don't need it very often. You don't want to lean on it too heavily. But as you've kind of seen in these videos so far, like maybe once or twice out of every video, it's kind of helpful. This is one of those cases. But you know what? It's actually not helpful just yet. I have fat fingers. I'm just as likely to make a mistake punching in as I am doing the math. Here, there's a lot of easy stuff I can do first before I start punching into the calculator. For example, we can lop off a bunch of zeros. So this becomes 13. This becomes 18. All right, 18 times 20, that's easy. That's mental math, 360 over 13. So this is my pure gold in metric tons per day that's generated. Now I want my calculator. So what do I get here? I get 27. I cheated and punched this in earlier, but I get 27.69. That's my output per day. What's the question? Number of days to produce 100 metric tons. So you can either divide that out and go 100 over 27.69, or you can just kind of eyeball it. That's fine too. I'm going to go ahead and divide this out here. And all I really need to know is that it's somewhere between 3 and 4. That's it. Look at the way the question's structured. That's it. That's all I need to know. I know that it's going to take at least 3 days. 3 days is going to get me to about, 81, 82 metric tons. Sometime on that 4th day, I hit the 100 mark and I blow past it. So between 3 and 4 days, that's it. And my answer here is C, which I didn't see a whole lot of C's on the first wave of folks here. All right. A couple questions about the calculator while we've got it here, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Oops, that's not what I meant to do at all. Is a calculator on Data Insights similar to GRE or a bit more powerful and handle bigger numbers? It's pretty similar. It's pretty annoying. It's pretty limited. That's part of why I say you don't want to lean on it. I don't want to start punching big numbers in here. It's really irritating to punch those in on the computer screen. So yes, it's a tool. Will you use it out of your 20 questions on Data Insights? Maybe once or twice. If you're using it much more than that, you're probably making your life harder, not easier. So use it sparingly. And again, apologies for all the mispronunciations here, Adrish. Yes, it is notoriously difficult to use. Now, your opinion may vary. I'm not a fan. I don't like punching on the screen like that. I think it's really cumbersome. I'm not saying don't ever use it because, yeah, there's times when that's going to be really helpful. And we've illustrated that through this video series a couple times. But yeah, you don't want to lean on it too heavily. It's just as likely to induce a bad error as it is to save you from one. So use it thoughtfully. If you have big numbers and you're slapping things into the calculator, think twice. Maybe you didn't pick the best path. All right. That is it for today. Congratulations. You have survived the mother-in-law of all Data Insights question types, multi-source reasoning. Next video, don't miss it. Data Insights, data sufficiency. Yep, been around forever. A little different now. We're going to talk about all that, how to maximize your performance on it. A little bit less math than they used to be. The changes are kind of interesting. So join us for that on Friday if you're watching live. Join us for that not live if you're watching not live. And that is it for today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed this, as always, hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please hit us up in the comments section. If there's something you want to see in a future video, let us know, and we'll do our best to accommodate. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have fun studying.